And welcome to the Steelers Depot live stream here on this Monday, July 11th. I am Alex Kazor, and as always, joining me today is Dave Bryan. Dave, how you doing? It has been an unusually busy day as the Steelers have a new place to call home, not in location, but in name, and it feels really strange.
Yeah, are we sure everybody can hear me?
Let's honestly test that as well. Let me chat if you can let me know if Dave sounds okay. That would be appreciated.
Testing.
The
Getting some
ritual.
surety here.
Yeah, that's. I'm gonna struggle to say that name so much. Heinz just rolled off the tongue so well for me. Mutated Genome says good to go. Just want to confirm that. Make sure there's no echo, no weirdness. I may not sound as good as I have on the podcast on an old mic right now, but that all sounds good. So that's all taken care of and out of the way. As Findle says, I assure I can hear you too. So there you go. That's the news of the day. 15-year deal. So if you don't like the name, you better get used to it. It's not going to go away for quite some time. Heinz and Kraft Heinz saying they could not compete financially with what and how do you say it? Acrisure?
Acrosure, I guess.
Acrisure. I'm gonna
Acrosure.
that's gonna bug the heck out of me. But
Right.
yeah,
I,
reportedly.
I I never had heard of the company until today, and my wife was in banking and for of course, she hadn't been in there for a while, but over 20 years, and she handles all the finance. Yeah, I would think if anybody would know, maybe who that company was, I thought my wife would, but she had no clue who it was, and I even had to pronounce it a few times for her
Mm.
as well there. So, look, I mean, I understand. I hate when they change a font on a jar of pizza sauce or something that I use. I'm old. I don't like change. I'm a traditionalist at my age. I don't like any change. So, like most of the people listening to this, obviously not liking the news at all, but as people have probably heard me say over the years several times on the podcast, my philosophy is nothing lasts forever and always follow the money. And I think both instances are in play here, and teams like the opportunity to have additional income revenue, if you will. It helps in obviously paying the players and all, and judging by the release by the Kraft Heinz company earlier today on their website. They just they couldn't get to what the Steelers or what Acrisure was offering there. So naming rights is obviously big business in professional sports, and really getting into, I guess, college sports as well
Hmm.
too. So uh, always follow the money, and that's the case here. And I guess best case scenario at this point is, can Heinz maybe do something where maybe they keep the red zone or something along those lines there. So interesting last couple 24 hours or so, I
Hmm.
guess.
Maybe some smaller ketchup bottles to be found elsewhere at Acrisure Stadium. I don't like the name. I think most people don't, but we're gonna get used to it, and we'll be accepting it probably this time next year, if I had to guess.
We might take that long to learn how to say it.
For me especially, because I'm gonna mush mouth that a lot, so I apologize in advance. But you guys know the drill here. And actually, chat, you tell me, will you and be honest here, will you still call it Heinz Field? Will you actually start saying Acrisure? I know most people have the knee jerk reaction of I will just keep calling it the old name, but let me know what do you plan to refer to the Steelers' new home or stadium as. Let us know in the chat, and you guys know the drill. Otherwise, you can submit your questions, and Dave and I will answer them for the next hour until 8 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to have your question be guaranteed to be asked and answered by Dave and myself, you can send us a super chat. No obligation to do so, but we appreciate it all the same. As Mutated Genome says, I still say Three Rivers, which was such a good stadium name. I understand the corporate and everyone needs a sponsor, but Three Rivers was just the best name you could have for a place to play football. All right,
Mm-hmm.
let's get to the questions here. And this one came in much earlier from Raged EA2. So hopefully you're still here to hear this question, be answered by Dave and myself. General football question: why has a team never succeeded or even tried a quarterback by committee system? The ups and downs are fairly obvious, but could the ups ever outweigh the downs? Could it work? Well, you know the old adage: if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. I'm not sure really what the ups even are. Maybe in theory you could put in a runner and a more athletic guy versus a pocket passer, but how do you practice? How do you get the reps to be able to get both guys ready and prepared? There actually have been instances where teams have tried two quarterbacks, mostly out of desperation because they just didn't have one quarterback, a guy they wanted to start with. I think maybe the Giants or the Colts in the 50s had a system where they would put in their backup quarterback who was super intelligent and knew the game really well to start the game for the first couple drives, and then he would relay that information about what the defense was doing to the other guy who would come in and start and play the rest of the game. But generally speaking, teams want one established guy, one face, one leader. And it's hard enough to find one quarterback worth playing in today's NFL, let alone trying to find two of them.
Yeah, and look, practice time nowadays and all that goes along with that, makes it kind of tough to have a two quarterback system. You want some continuity in there and snap cadence and all that kind of stuff too. I mean, not saying that something like that to some degree with some, we've seen some wildcat kind of stuff over the years, but usually that stuff hits and is gone and as quick as it comes in a lot of times. So I would be surprised if we ever saw kind of a full fledged kind of dual quarterback system in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Dave. Matt Bell, and you may have asked this last time, I can't quite remember, but says, hi, Dave and Alex. If you could redraft one player from the 2022 draft, who would it be and who would you replace him with? I know, Dave, you do the redraft exercise each year, and I can probably pull that up right now to see what some of the answers were. I can't remember off the top of my head who I might replace the guy I'm going to choose to redraft with, and that'd be DeMarvin Leal. That was probably my least, and in fact, it was my least favorite selection this team made during the draft was taking DeMarvin Leal in the third round. I can't think top of my head who I would have replaced him with. I think I had multiple changes in my submission for the exercise. But where do you come in, Dave?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up that old redraft post myself now at this point and looking at the players drafted after DeMarvin Leal and prior to, of course, that would have been what Calvin Austin, I think, in the fourth round. Let me scan down the names here real quick because I don't remember off the top of my head if there would have been anybody that really struck out. I was a big Pierre Strong fan, and he went 127th overall. It's going to be interesting to kind of track his career moving forward. Let's see, they obviously didn't need a wide receiver at that point. I liked Romeo Dubs coming out of Nevada. If memory serves me there. Let me see if I can pick out another name for the folks here that jumps off to me. I'm not really finding anyone off. Leo Chanel was a real popular, nice athleticism profile for Leo Chanel out of Wisconsin. That would have been an interesting. That probably would be another one on that. On the list. Obviously, Danny Gray was in there, but they had already drafted George Pickens. Danny Gray was somebody that we kind of linked to the Steelers through the process. I think Daniel Falele was another one, wasn't he, at 110 overall? Didn't the Steelers have some mild interest in him?
Yeah, at his pro day, Pat Meyer was.
Right. So I would imagine that those would have been some of the options had a guy like DeMarvin Leal not been there, because obviously Carl Dunbar was at the Texas A&M pro day, and then if you go on down the list here, like we said, you had the Steelers at the Danny Gray pro day. I think they were at the as we mentioned, the Falele pro day. And I don't think anybody, they were obviously at the Pierre Strong Jr. Pro Day, right?
Yeah, Phil Kreidler and Matt Tomshow, no positional coach, but they were well attended at the South Dakota State Pro Day for him and obviously Chris Holodokin. My redraft is on screen right now. Jalen Petre in the first round, George Pickens, Malik Willis, Calvin Austin, Ko Keefe, Balin Spector, and Rasheed Walker. So that's my meaningless exercise there. But replacing one player, I would have replaced Marvin Leal.
All right. Yeah.
Just
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
just worried about that run defense. They add weight. How's that going to mess with his athleticism? Where's his true fit? It's just there's a lot of concerns to me there. Got a super chat, $5 from our friend Tim Chase. Good to hear from you, Tim. Any running backs you're hoping to get let go or traded for? A couple of names. Tom Mee just wrote about that the other day. I usually wait until much later in camp to see because so much can change and so much will change and what players might be available and who's on the chopping block and rumors and those kinds of things. But I'll pull up Tom's article here that talks about 7 names who could potentially be available come later this summer. Some of them include Duke Johnson, Ty Johnson, Ernest Johnson, Jarek McKinnon, Chris Carson. That'd be an interesting one, but there's the neck injury there, so health wise, have to see where he's at. But I really don't know right now. I have not spent much time or really any time thinking about potential running back names.
Yeah, I liked, it's been obviously several years and he's got a little bit of age on him now, but Duke Johnson, I've always kind of been a fan of his. I think we've talked about him several times
Mm-hmm.
on the podcast over the years. Ernest Johnson's had a few interesting carries throughout his career as well, too. As you mentioned, I think Chris Carson has had some neck issues or something like that. I won't be shocked if, and look, part of today's news cycle was Daniel Archibong going on the reserve retired list. So that obviously opens up a spot on the 90-man roster as we sit here today. And you would think they would fill it in some way, shape, or form prior to training camp getting underway there. And I don't think you can completely rule out a running back being added at some point. Look, you know how the attrition happens through some of the rooms throughout training camp with some of these younger guys going down and end up getting waived injured. So I don't think, will it be a more veteran guy? I mean, it could go 50-50. They're not going to obviously spend a lot of money on a guy like that. But if they could get somebody for the minimum or thereabouts, I don't think you can totally rule out, the possibility of a running back with that's got some experience being added. And I tell you this, now, Mike Tomlin is a Benny Snell guy, is he not?
Mm-hmm. Benny
And
Snell football.
and I know a lot of people probably listening to this are probably saying, "Man, can't we get Benny Snell out of Pittsburgh?" Well, I really think he's like there, and he obviously gives you something in the special teams category as well, and that's going to help his cause once again this summer. So I'm not saying he's guaranteed to make it, but when you got special teams ability and you seem to have Mike Tomlin in your corner, that certainly doesn't hurt.
Yep. When Mike Tomlin likes you, when Danny Smith likes you, good chance you're going to make the roster. Those are two very important people you want in your corner. But even if he does, that leaves one spot, at least one spot, for another running back. And that could be a McFarland, a Durant, a Warren. But let me ask you this real quick, Dave. Will there be a running back traveling to Cincinnati week 1 as a Pittsburgh Steeler who is not currently on this roster?
Oh wow, that's
I'm going to say yes. I'll get ahead of it and just say yes.
yeah, that's an interesting question, and it really could go either way. Uh Man, yeah, I'll go ahead and go yes with you.
Okay.
Just because of what the back end of it looks, back behind Benny Snell and Najee Harris right now. So I'll go ahead and say yes, and then that maybe they stash one of those guys like Durant or Warren on the practice squad.
All right, let me just hit a couple questions that just came in because they're going to be quick and easy to answer. Corey's asking, any idea how long the Acrisure contract is for? 15 years. That's the length of the deal. Reginald, do the Steelers get a comp pick for Omar Khan? They do not. That's only for teams that lose, high executive or head coach minority members. This is a promotion, so there is no compensatory pick there. And then Lauren, California Pokemon Girl 623. If you're going to rename Heinz Field, at least rename it after a Pittsburgh company. Acrisure is not a Pittsburgh company. Fair point, but as Dave said, money talks, and whoever offered the most money was going to get the bid, and that's, I assume, what happened.
Yeah, and we'll probably never know. There might have been a few other Pittsburgh companies maybe putting in offers for that, but if it was something I mean, it all you follow the money.
Yep.
That's what I always say there. And I imagine, and we don't know the exact figures. I think there's the report running around out there that it's more than 10 million a year. So you do the math on that. That's what $150 million right there. So we'll see if more stuff leaks, maybe about other companies that maybe put in. But Heinz on the Kraft website today, as we open up with, made it clear that they couldn't compete with the offer.
Right. And so it looks like they'll still be partners with the team, as you mentioned, but just in a obviously smaller and less visible capacity. And I will say this, just last thing on the stadium situation. I know his timeline of tweets can be cringeworthy at times, but I will give Andrew Filipponi a lot of credit because he was all over this. Whoever his source was immaculate to be on top of this information. So he's the one that's kind of driven this news story made official by the team on Monday. This is from Greg Smith. A question for Dave. What was the reaction from the general public when Three Rivers was renamed to Heinz? Was the uproar anything like what we saw today on the Twitter machine? Dave, remember back in
Oh yeah,
01?
but I mean, obviously you didn't have kind of the online news cycle that you obviously have now. In fact, most of everything that you read, uh, you know, came from newspaper websites at the time, and maybe whatever discussion forums were alive at the time there. But the thing about it is too, there is a difference there because you had a new stadium.
Right, that's true.
Three Rivers was Three Rivers, and I mean, we're talking what 20 something years ago there. I'd be lying if I said I remember what the overall sentiment was at the time. I don't remember it being that big a deal. Of course, I wasn't actively searching it out either, because once again, look, I mean, Steelers Depot started in 2008. And yeah, obviously I was online, in the late 90s and all like that, and surfing the message boards and getting what news I could off of the online newspapers as they came about. But I really don't remember much of anything other than the actual news of the progress of Heinz Field coming and then being named Heinz Field, and then obviously the migration from Three Rivers over to Heinz Field in 2001.
Right, as you said, it was a new stadium, so the expectation was there would be a new name. It was Heinz, it was local, it's Heinz Ward. I mean, there were a lot of ties that I think probably made that a pretty popular choice. Not the case this time around with Acrisure. I'm really gonna have to
Acrisure.
work on that one for
Look,
sure.
I imagine there was some section of people say, I can't believe you're naming this after a ketchup company.
True. Oh yeah.
You're not going to please 100% of the people 100% of the time. And look, I know a lot of you listening to this are kind of floored by it and wish it would be a local Pittsburgh company and all like that. I get it. And look, even out here in Vegas, the new Raiders Stadium is called Allegiant Stadium
Mm.
after the airline. And a lot of people hate that,
Really, I like that one better
yeah,
than Acrisure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, at least it is an airline, I guess, and all like that. But I mean, either way, you're not gonna please, and are we still gonna be talking about this a year from now? I tell you what, I don't want to be one of those rented people standing outside of. I almost called it Heinz
Yeah, which will be the first of us to slip up and say that on the
Oh,
podcast.
I'm gonna. It's gonna be in articles and everything for me. I'm gonna mess up as far as that goes. But I'd hate to be one of those people that Acrisure has rented people has hired to stand outside of Acrisure Stadium in what is it, week 2 against the New England Patriots, hanging out koozies and
True.
T-shirts and all like that, because those people are not going to be well received at all. I hope they pay those people a lot of money to do that, because they're going to face a lot of unhappy Yinzers, if you will.
I'd hate to be the Acrisure social media team today too. They post their whole thing. Look at us, new stadium, big bright lights, and everyone's just like, "You suck. We hate this." That's not a
Yeah.
good response, but
And here's the thing: it doesn't look like their social media presence really has been all that on Twitter and all
mm-mm.
like that. So a lot of people, are saying, "What the hell are they?"
Right.
Should I consult my doctor before I use Acrisure? you
What are the
know,
side effects of it? Yeah.
yeah, the not knowing and struggling to get information right off the top, I guess, is didn't help them in there. Now, there's some articles on the internet if people have time to read about the big business that is naming rights and brand recognition and everything that goes along in that. And the one kind of side story here is what Thomas Toll, I think,
Hmm.
one of the co-owners, uh, had a company that I think Acrisure bought. Is that how it rolls,
Correct.
Alex?
Yep.
So and evidently this owner of Acrisure claims to be a lifelong Steelers fan. I
Don't
don't.
know about that
Greg,
one.
yeah, Greg Williams is the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Acrisure. And the press release today mentioned something along the lines that he's a lifelong Steelers fan. And obviously, once again, Thomas Toll has had something to do, with the Steelers for quite a while. So maybe he helped facilitate that on top of it all here.
I feel like the CEO saying he's a lifelong Steelers fan is like when some player gets drafted by a team. Is like,
Mm,
man, I've been rooting for the Ravens all my life. I know I lived in
right.
Kansas, but I've been a diehard Ravens fan. You just say that stuff to try to have a little good spin to it all. But it's not a great name, but we'll all get over it. Let's see. Mutated Genome says, who's going to get the green dot on defense? Good question. Have an article written today by Lucas Campbell asking and trying to answer that same question. Miles Jack or Devin Bush. It feels like a game of hot potato. I don't think either guy really wants to wear the green dot, but logically, you think one of those guys will. If I had to guess, it'll be Miles Jack because I expect him to be the every down, three down, 100% guy this year.
That would be my guess as well too. And it's got to be somebody that can, that can quarterback that thing and be on the field quite a bit on top of it. And in all likelihood, you would think Miles Jack would see the field more than Devin Bush and some sub packages and all. Obviously, now look, Cameron Sutton, I think, has a long history of doing a good job of communicating and relaying the calls, but it's rare that you see a cornerback with the green dot. So, in tradition for a while has been that it's been an inside linebacker with the Steelers. So, I think the best bet as we sit here in the middle of July would be Miles Jack.
Agreed. I know TJ Watt has worn it at times as well, so that's possible, but my
I
guess it'll
don't. I
be
don't
Miles
think he.
Jack.
I think that's more of, well, I'll do it if in
Sure.
in situation. I think he's more. I don't think he's that big of a talker. I don't think he wants to kind of be saddled with that kind of stuff.
I don't think any of them want to be saddled by it, though,
Right.
because I think in the article they talk about how Jack played much worse when he had to wear the green dot and had to do all this stuff pre snap.
Mm.
So I don't know. We'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. We won't figure it out. We'll let you know who's wearing it. John Pennington, hello, Dave and Alex. Are you guys surviving the news today? What position do you guys think the Steelers should fill with the extra spot? Maybe a backup corner or outside linebacker. Mention running back, and I know Dave would not be opposed to the
Edge
edge
rusher.
rushers. Did that guy
Yeah.
from the USFL get picked up? What was his name? Chris? The guy
Odom.
you wrote about.
Odom. Right.
Odom. Okay.
I haven't seen yet. That doesn't
Because there were
mean.
tryouts. There was a tweet at least hinting there was NFL interest in him. I think that kind of what led you to write the article.
Yeah, I haven't seen. Let's see. I just see that the teams he had workouts and all scheduled, but I haven't seen him actually sign anywhere yet, and I don't think he's on the NFL transaction list yet.
Okay. My guess it'll be either a running back or just a defensive lineman to replace Daniel Archibald.
Okay.
Let's see. Next question comes from. See if I can find something here. Let's see. Jason Council going to my first training camp at Latrobe in a couple of weeks. Alex, do you have any advice about parking or tips you wish you knew beforehand? Also, great spots in Latrobe. Thanks. Love the site. I appreciate that, Jason. So glad you're making it out to Latrobe this year. So glad this team is back at Latrobe this year. Parking's just one big giant field. It's a little bit of a walk, so if you get there earlier, you'll have a better spot. If it's going to be rainy and crappy weather, they may push you in a parking lot. There's a bunch of signs, so just follow that. But it's pretty standard and it is free as well. Really, my advice is just check the weather. It can be really hot. There can be rain. Obviously, there's not a lot of shade or places to take cover and stuff like that. Bring some water, get some food. You can bring that stuff in. At least I assume you still can. Make sure you have your ticket. By the way, I assume that you have to have a ticket to now enter training camp this year at SVC. That's new for Latrobe. Other than that, if you want to get autographs, get there super early to race up to the fence line. But it's a lot of fun. It's pretty easy. It can be totally free, and hope you have a good time.
And always bring a towel, right?
All right, a
That's
little
my
South Park
little
reference.
South
Yeah.
Park
In
reference there.
terms of a great spot, just Route 30 has a bunch of restaurants, Sharkies, anything on Route 30. It's right off St. Vincent College, and so just jump on there, and you'll find some good restaurants.
I've
Uh,
never been,
you
so
got to go. Will you ever make
yeah.
it out? Do you think you'll ever make it out?
I doubt it. I
All right,
doubt it.
fair enough.
I don't like crowds, and I don't like people, and those two things I think go hand in hand there.
K. Jackson, Pittsburgh. Hey guys, do you believe that T.J. Watt will break the Steelers' all-time sack record this season? It's not a question of if; it's a question of when. And you wrote the article. Could this happen by about the bye week? I think it could be as early as that. But if he does not break it this year, that means he got hurt or something disastrous occurred. But to me, it's a question of just when he'll do it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the big question is, and I wrote about it just a couple of days ago there. You look at his, I mean, he's almost, that guy's averaging almost a sack a game
Mm,
throughout his career. Just phenomenal. And when you think about what he was able to do last year, despite all the attention that he got after all the injuries, on that defensive front and all like that, I think that even makes what he did last year even that more spectacular. And how healthy was that groin from what was it week 2, right? Raiders game didn't
yeah,
did is when he tweaked it, and didn't he miss like the next game after that? And then I mean, how did that groin ever get healthy for him last year?
right. Then he had the hip
Fully.
and the ribs. He just was. He did not play 100% basically the entire year.
And if you want to do the math on it, and obviously the Steelers bye week I think is in week 9. You do the math, what, 7.5 sacks if he keeps at his current pace would put him just short of the James Harrison number by the bye week. But we've also seen Watt get what, 11. How many sacks did he had? Did I write that he had by through the first 8 games last year? Something like what, 11 and a half, something like that. So I mean, it can be done, but I would kind of circle, that right before the bye there, to see if he can do it by the bye. If he stays healthy, there's a chance he could do it by the bye. If he doesn't get it done by the bye, then I think you're setting yourself up for the game after the bye to potentially be, the game that he gets it done in.
It's just astounding that even if you consider the unofficial sack numbers of Joe Green, LC Greenwood, etc., TJ Watt will still surpass all those guys by year's end. In his 6th season, and the dude's what, 26 years old? I mean, that is just a historic pace.
Right, and looking at the schedule, obviously, if he was to do it in week 7 or week 8, that would be on the road against either Miami or Philadelphia. And then obviously, if he did it after the bye, the next 2 games are obviously the Saints and the Bengals. So uh, that'd be something great to try to bet on, right? Because he, once again, if he averages, I think it's like 0.945 or something like that sacks per game for his career. And if you do the math in the first 8 games, it's 7.5 sacks, put him just short of James Harrison. But we've also seen this is a TJ Watt that can get 4 sacks in a game,
Hmm.
in one single game as well too there. So I would calculate once again right around the bye somewhere in there if he stays healthy of being the Steelers' new franchise sack leader.
The games after the bye are at home, correct? You said New Orleans and
Yeah, you get
Cincinnati.
the Saints and the Bengals at Acrisure Stadium.
There you go. That's when he can break the record. If you really want to have the debate about TJ Watt, to me, it's will he break the single season all time sack record this year? He tied it last year with Michael Strahan, 22 and a half. Could he break that considering he tied the record last year despite missing 2 full games and missing halves of, I believe, 2 others? So missed, what, 8 quarters or something like that. So that to me is the more interesting question. Could he break the 22 and a half sack mark?
And it'll be a good discussion to have if he breaks the sack record, and obviously not only breaks the Steelers sack record, let's say he sets a new NFL sack record, which is obviously means he'd have to stay healthy and have a duplicate season to last year a little bit better, and wins Defensive Player of the Year honors award again. You know, at that point would it be too early to start talking about T.J. Watt being kind of a slam dunk for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or will he need more on his resume?
I think he would still need a little bit more, but certainly would be on as nearly of a slam dunk path as you could be for someone who's not all the way there. But again, I mean, it's just an incredible run, historic run. I mean, how many sacks is this guy going to finish his career with? I mean, that's a question that no one knows. It's impossible to predict. But 150, 200, could he threaten that if he stays healthy and plays until he's like 35?
I
I
mean,
mean, you can't
the
rule it
whole
out.
thing is, can he stay healthy? He's definitely got the ability. Man, heavy hands, and it just goes back to kind of what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. Uh, you go back and you look at his college film, and I broke down all the sacks and several of his quarterback hits right after he was drafted and all like that. His sack reel isn't overly impressive, from college. But one thing that's obviously sticks out or stuck out at the time was Kevin Colbert saying, "Man, you just look at the handwork that this guy has, and he is progressively from the day he was drafted until obviously last year, he's progressively gotten better as a pass rusher. He was far from a finished product, I think, coming out of Wisconsin. I think that's kind of what led to him, falling like he did, because I don't think he was a complete pass rusher, and I don't think his sack reel was as impressive as you see some of these kids coming out at times with. And also coming out, had the knee injuries concerns coming out, and really only the one full season, if you will. So a lot of that led to that. But I mean, he has progressively gotten better as a pass rusher each and every year in the
hmm
NFL.
Definitely. Chat, if you guys could do two things for me, I'd appreciate it. Be sure to like this stream. That'll bring more people into the chat. And let me know, how many sacks do you think TJ Watt will finish this year with? Will he break Strahan's mark? Will he tie it again? Will he have a bit of regression, which for him would still probably be 18 to 20 sacks? Let me know how many sacks you think he'll record this year. Back to the questions. Next one's going to come from Tim Chase asking, is Joe Hayden a long shot? I assume that's implying, is there any scenario in which Joe Hayden returns? I think unless Pittsburgh's secondary and cornerback room is decimated by injuries, I cannot see Joe Hayden coming back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, me either. And I think Dr. Melanie Friedlander, Dr. At Girl Surgeon on Twitter, had a terrible take about this on Sunday. I mean, I think Joe would love to return, but it's about the money and playing time and all like that. And the Steelers went out obviously and re-signed Akella Witherspoon for $4 million per season. They gave the same exact deal to Levi Wallace. You got Cameron Sutton that you're paying money to as well too. So unless Joe was willing to come back right now on a minimum veteran benefit contract, which I'm betting he's not. The longer that Joe stays unemployed at this point, the more chance he's going to have to get a bigger contract somewhere.
Right.
Because unfortunately injuries are going to happen to some team or teams during the training camp preseason process there, and someone's going to get in need of a veteran, experienced cornerback, and that's when Joe Hayden's phone's going to start ringing more. So really the only way I think the Steelers fall into that picture there is if they're one of those teams that has an injury or two, say with Levi Wallace or Cameron Sutton or Keller Witherspoon.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the only way I could see it at this point.
Yep, he can be patient. There's no rush. Something will open up for him, and I think it'll be something other than a return to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tim also had a $5 super chat. Almost missed it. Apologized for that, but we'll read it now. In reference to what Pittsburgh should do with their open roster spot following the Daniel Archibong retirement, says backup left tackle and outside linebacker, please. Mention some of the edge rushers. Offensive tackle. Man, what happens if they lose in injury to Dan Moore or Okorafor? Do you feel like you
Yeah.
have to make a move? I mean, Joe Haig's a good swing guy, but if this guy's got to start more than a month of a season, I feel like you're not comfortable with that.
Right. I think you got to do something if you lose one of those guys. But on the flip side, right now, talking about getting an experienced one, How many guys are you going to be willing to come in for maybe 2.5 million or less?
Sure.
Maybe there's a few. A lot of those guys, like the Eric Fishers and all, like right now, are following the same path as Joe Hayden. Thinking my market value will only increase at this point of the offseason and moving forward. Why would I sign up for a minimum or near minimal deal right now if, say, 2 weeks into training camp, a team loses a starting left tackle and my phone rings for a $3.5 million deal or something like
Right.
that?
Right. So that's a fair point there. I wonder. It's hard to find those tackles too. Could you would you potentially trade for somebody? I know I'm really taking a lot of steps down the road here, but if you lost, say, more core four in camp, they'd be out half the season. Would you would you make a move that way? It feels like, especially really regardless of which quarterback, but especially if it's Pickett, you want a better, say, left tackle protecting him.
Yeah, but you just don't push a button,
No, I know.
with that as well too. I mean, and there's going to be there's probably going to be a couple veteran tackles around the league that you know, that throughout training camp and the preseason end up getting cut, or end up being on the trade block from there. So, and obviously, not having a list of names makes it hard, but it's something that you have to pursue. And look, you look at the 90-man roster right now, then you try to predict the 53-man roster out of that right now. And as we've stated for several years, and it's already happened this year with a guy like Larry Ogunjobi, the team that they took the mandatory mini camp. You're still going to get additional guys out who weren't on the roster at that time end up making your 53-man rosters. So I firmly believe at some point there's going to be another guy or two added to this team, whether it be start of training camp or after or right around the final cut downs or whatnot, that ends up being on the 53-man roster. The Steelers just have a good history of that happening with two to three guys a year. With that, might a tackle be in play there? Absolutely. It goes right back to the running back position. I think you have to keep your mind open if you are the Steelers, because I mean, do you really want to see a guy like Joe Haig, have to play, you know, really either tackle spot,
Hmm.
for a considerable amount of time? And obviously, they got the young kid out of North Carolina that they're going to look at. You've got a couple of veteran guys in there, in Trent Scott and Chaz Green, but the, the film on those guys is not great,
Hmm.
and that's why they're on the deals that they're on at this point.
Yeah, I think I talk about that out loud to say that I'm comfortable with Joe Haig in the short term, mid game, for a game. You can work with that, a guy that's experienced and can jump right in. But if it's a longer term thing, obviously I become far less comfortable with Joe Haig being this team, say, left tackle for 5 games of a season. So I don't think you won't. They won't make a move now because of that. But if something happens, if a tackle were to go down, that should and probably will put a lot of pressure on this team to go add somebody.
And look, Alejandro Villanueva was a bit of a rarity because the playing time, the amount of games that he started in a row, and what did he miss snap wise over the course of his career once he took over that spot, like six?
Yeah, you can count them on
I
one
mean,
hand. Yeah.
right? That's rare. That's very, very rare. So I mean, looking ahead to 2022, the odds of Chiquama Corfor and Dan Moore Jr. missing snaps and potentially even games, it's likely to happen. Just the odds, tell you that might happen there.
Hmm.
So they should be on the lookout for a guy for 2.5 or 3 million or so that might could provide depth in there.
K. Jackson, Pittsburgh. Do you believe the Steelers will be better than the 7.5 games that Vegas is predicting? Looking at the team before training camp, I wait until right before the start of the season to give my final and really only season prediction. You just want to see what happens, how these guys look. There's so many unknowns, especially this year. Injuries can always play a role in things. I'll have an article tomorrow morning explaining why I've become more pessimistic about Pittsburgh's record and chances this season. And so I'll tease that for tomorrow, a stat that really kind of caught my attention. So I don't know where I'm at right now, but I'll let you know before the season starts, K. Jackson.
I just at K Jackson, on the number alone, with the 7.5 number. I mean, I don't see how you don't play the over on that just because, a 7.5 win season or less would obviously be a losing season. And you just kind of want, I mean, if this defense can at least stay healthy and play, like we think that they might be able to play and obviously be better against the run than they were last year and not have the injuries and all. And, that's a lot of qualifiers in there. But they should be able to keep this team in some games. The big question, obviously, and it's a question that's been the question all offseason is what can this offense do? And it's going to have to be an offense that's predicated on running the ball successfully and probably a lot more two tight end sets and making sure you play good situational football and not ask your quarterback to do too much and thus meaning not put them in those third and long situations consistently. That's where the big question is going to be about this 2022 Steelers team up until we get started in the season is what can this offense do? And if the defense doesn't hold up their side of the bargain, then you're going to potentially have real problems. But from where I sit, at least right now, and obviously a lot of things can still change between now and week one of the season, I would bet the over on the 7.5. And not by much, but I mean, all we're talking about is more than 7.5. So
Right.
I think that this team is at least a team right now that could win 8 games at a minimum.
Yeah, that could still be the dreaded losing season, but still picking the over there. But the article tomorrow, I want to get your thoughts on the podcast Tuesday to see if it sways you at all, because it's kind of
Right.
swayed me a little bit. What you mentioned leads into our next question, well, from Matthew Holloran, who says every team develops a unique identity throughout the season. Do you have a prediction on this 22-23 Steelers team identity? It's a really good question, and offensively, there are so many unknowns and so many new pieces. Of course, none bigger than quarterback. It's difficult to predict. As I've said before, I think this year will be more Matt Canada's offense to really run in his vision of how it should be run. So more under center, more play action, more boot game, more quarterbacks on the move. Obviously, really emphasizing the run game even more. In terms of the run scheme, I'm not quite sure what it's going to be, but you're going to see a team that's going to go from 11 personnel, shotgun, RPO, quick game to a little more old school, the run game, under center, play action, take shots deep off of it kind of deal. That's in theory how this offensive identity should look.
I tell you, the identity that hopefully that we're talking about this team come, let's say, around week 7 of the season is, man, can you believe how good this run defense is?
Yep.
And can you believe the amount of takeaways this defense has this year? That needs to be the identity because the offense should be sustaining enough to help take advantage of those sort of things, keeping the score down, stopping the running game. The takeaways have got, the sack totals are obviously nice, and this is a, Steelers team that's constantly leading the league in sacks, but got to get the ball away. That's something that needs. I would be willing to sacrifice 10 sacks of the season if they, had 6 more turnovers.
Right. And they struggled
Uh,
with turnovers last year. They got hot late in the year, but for most of the year, they had like 10, I think, entering, I don't know, week 14 or something.
But once again, if we're not talking about that come week 7, with the narrative being, man, can you believe how good this run defense is? Can you believe how many takeaways they have? If we're not talking about that as part of the 2022 Steelers up until that point, then it's probably been a rough first 7 or 8 games.
Agreed. Run defense has to be at least top 10. I think Jerry Olsavsky just spoke about that, or at least it was reported about recently. And then you got to get, sack totals still got to be around 50, 50 plus. And then takeaways has to be closer to 20 than farther away from 20, put it that way. Let's see. Next question comes from, let's see, K Jackson, Pittsburgh again. Hey guys, do you believe that the Steelers have done enough on the O-line to improve the running game? Surely that is what the Steelers want to do this year. Definitely that's their intent. I think there's going to be improvement. The question is, and Dave and I have talked about that, is how much better will it get? So Dave, how much better do you think it could or would get this year?
Yeah, first and foremost, I mean, you don't want to publicly say, can it get worse? Because it can always get worse. But I foresee it being better. At just how much better? I mean, you got kind of a journeyman guy in the middle there, but his play, Mason Cole, you would think is going to be better than what you got out of Kendrick Green last year. James Daniel, Daniel's someone that you talked about early in the offseason. I mean, he's
Hmm.
the perfect fit for where he's at right there at right guard. Can Kevin Dotson become that guy that we thought that he might become after coming out of Louisiana Lafayette? We haven't seen that guy that people are saying, oh man, combine snub, the Steelers got to steal. We haven't seen that guy yet. If he shows up, then you're going to be in a lot better shape. If James Daniels plays like you think he can play at right guard, going to be in good shape. You already got a pretty good idea of how your tackles are going to be. Although you would think Dan Moore Jr. with a year under his belt and getting stronger and tutelage of Pat Meyer will be somewhat better. I mean, we could speculate, but I'm not going to sit here and say that the Steelers offensive line is going to jump up into the top 15 of the NFL. We're going to have to see it
Yep.
on the field. That's the only other way. I mean, to be able to analyze this. I mean, people can blow smoke up each other's, what, and say, oh, it's, they've rebuilt it. It's going to be better. And, we have to see it, plain and simple. And, as much film study as we have done on these guys, especially the new guys in Mason Cole and James Daniels, we still got to see it. We got to see Kevin Dotson make that next step. So, yeah, I mean, if they can get around to, you know, and what metrics you would go by to determine it, it is obviously subjective. But I mean, if they could become just an NFL average offensive line, they're going to be in a lot better shape than they were last year for sure.
Hmm. The individual play is important, but the collective play is even more important. How each guy plays next to each other and as a starting five with a new offensive line coach, the third one in 3 years. So, as you said, it's really hard to predict. We can look at them on paper and say there has been improvement. I think there will be improvement. Will it be enough? Is the really defining question of this Pittsburgh Steelers season to me.
I mean, they have got to be able to run the football.
Yep.
Plain and simple. We have got to see Najee Harris and his successful run rates be 55% or better, right out of the chute. We've got to see that kind of stuff early.
YouTube watcher says, how much more does Watt need to do to surpass Palomalu as Colbert's best draft pick? I assume that's more directed towards me because when I ranked all 176 of Colbert's draft picks, Troy was number one, edging out Ben, who was number two, which I know is controversial, but I gave my reasons back then. What would Watt have to do? Probably make some sort of big postseason impact play. You think about Troy's career, you think about the '08 championship game interception, pick six against Baltimore, that big moment there, winning Super Bowls, of course. So you can't put all that on TJ Watt, but maybe a postseason defining, changing kind of play would be nice. But the dude ends up with 200 sacks. It'll be hard not to put that guy number one, even if he never gets close to Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's a good point of separating the postseason from the regular season. I see where you're going there, and hopefully he gets a chance to
Yeah.
make a play in the playoffs in 2022. That'll be a great thing to have to talk about ahead of the playoffs if we're talking about the Steelers getting ready for the playoffs in 2022. And can TJ Watt make a play in the playoffs this year? So let's get to that point. But like we just said when we were running down talking about TJ Watt earlier, man. I mean, what he's done in regular season play alone is pretty damn impressive to this point.
Hmm. By the way, Nolan D says if Joe Haig is playing, I'm not watching the game. So if Joe Haig enters the field, Nolan's TV's turning right off.
You got to watch it. You got to watch it. You might not like it, but you got to watch it.
He'll be watching. Nolan, you're going to be watching. Tim Chase, any big moves right before the 26th, the day the team reports to Latrobe? Dave, see any big moves coming before then?
I mean, like we've already said, I mean, I don't think it would be a huge shock if you got a backup tackle or a backup edge rusher, a backup running back. I don't think you're going to see anybody along the lines of the Larry Ogunjobi money deal. That would be a bit surprising for sure. I mean, I don't know what they're qualifying as big money and all like that. But I mean, I don't. Once again, I don't think it's out of the question to see a $2.5 million player at one of these positions be brought in.
I can't rule it out, but I'd be very surprised if anyone else signed above the minimum. Obviously, they will be adding somebody with Yarchabong retirement, but I don't think they're going to add in anybody over that minimum deal right now. That's my stance. But once you get into the camp and once you get injuries, that all can change. 007 Larry Ogunjobi got 8 million for 1 year. Do you feel that money was well spent? Do the Steelers improve with Larry O, or should that money have gone elsewhere? I think that I'm not sure who would have been a better signing at a position of need and impact and value and all that than Larry Ogunjobi, a guy who was supposed to get a $40 million contract with Chicago till he had the failed physical due to the whatever the exact nature of that foot injury was. And so, given to its retirement, the scheme fit what this team is looking for, some more pass rush juice, but somebody I think that plays better run defense than he's perceived. I think it was a pretty good use of funds.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is a guy that would, did they get the Larry Ogunjobi pre foot injury in that playoff game against the Raiders, right?
Right.
Uh, uh, if they got that guy, I think they're going to be in good shape. If they got the guy, if they didn't get that guy, in other words, that foot injury, stays problematic for him moving forward, then obviously they didn't get the right guy. So and we've kind of have stated that several times on the podcast since he was signed. If they got that guy that was playing, the 700 whatever snaps that he played last season for the Bengals, then they did good, on that. And look, there's some motivation obviously there for Ogunjobi as well too, because he gets to potentially take another bite of the free agent apple next year as a healthy guy, and hopefully as a guy that's got another 6, 7, 8 sacks underneath his belt
Mm-hmm.
on top of it there. So it's all going to go back to Ogunjobi and what the real deal is with that foot injury and all. And if he shows right out of the chute that he's over that, then I think they're going to be fine. If he doesn't, and it causes them problems and slows his play down, then then you're on the flip side of it.
And you may get that answer fairly soon if he's practicing first day of camp and he looks good and moves well. You feel pretty comfortable and confident. If he's not practicing, if he gets put on pup, even hopefully that does not happen, then you may start to feel less confident with where he's going to be at come week one.
Yeah, and it's hard to guess right now because we this team seems to be good health wise overall right now, but we've thought that before going into this time of the off season with 2 weeks to go until training camp, thinking, oh man, this team's not going to have anybody on the active PUP list to start camp, and then you turn around, there's 3 people
Mm-hmm.
on the active PUP list. Now here's the thing. Don't get freaked out if Larry Ogunjobi does start off camp on the active PUP, all right? Because you can be on the active PUP list at the start of training camp more as a precaution more than anything, and make sure they get a good look at you and all like that, and making sure. In other words, because if you go out there and if you have a player that goes out there and practices on day one of training camp and he's hurt, he's not 100%, or he gets injured, he is not eligible to start the season on PUP. So the precursor to starting a regular season on what's called the reserve PUP is you have to have been on active PUP before you practice once. So once you go out there and practice for a team during training camp, you are no longer eligible for the PUP list, period, end of story. However, if you start off training camp and you are on the active PUP list, obviously you cannot practice fully. You can work on the side and all, but if you stay on active PUP for the entire preseason, then you are eligible to go on the reserve PUP at the start of the season there. So they might, and I don't know this for sure, I don't know where he is. To hear him talk on the radio on Sirius a couple weeks ago, it seems like he's still some part of the rehab process in here.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be totally freaked out if he does start training camp on the active PUP list, because obviously he could maybe spend the first 10 days on active PUP list, and they say, okay, you're good to go, and then they take him off active PUP list, and off he goes. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Just don't be freaked out if that is the course of action with him.
Right, and there will still be people freaked out if that happens, so
Sure.
get ready for that. Reginald asks, what jersey number will Ogunjobi wear? I don't think it's been official. I believe he's still blank on the team website. Correct me if I'm wrong on that date, but I just checked a
Just
little bit
as of
ago.
the other day, on the media side of things, I don't think that has changed.
Yeah, I think it's still because
Hold on a
I
minute.
checked today here to look at something on Steelers.com, and I want to say his name was still there was no number listed next to his name, so I don't think we know what that is. He wore what 65 or 68?
65, wasn't it last
Yeah,
season?
yeah. I don't think and that's Dan Moore's number right now, so I don't know. I think Moore's going to keep that, but I think Arjabonk's still
Hold on a
unknown.
minute here. Hold on a minute. Maybe. Hold on. Where is it?
Yeah,
Maybe
I
I have it.
don't think it's been.
He's 65 on. He
Is
is
he?
sick. He is the defensive number 65.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of breaking news for you right now.
Is that's got to be new? They just had to posted that, I'm guessing.
It's on the Steeler, not on Steelers.com, but on the access that we have, the
Okay.
media side. It is showing 65. Now, obviously, Dan Moore Jr. 65, and it's not uncommon for teams during training camp to have a duplicate number with each player being on the opposite, one offense and one defense. Okay, so obviously Dan Moore Jr. is not going anywhere. So at some point, and he had 65 first, unless Larry Ogunjobi pays Dan Moore for 65, which I'm willing to bet that's not going to happen, then once one of these other numbers open up from a guy that gets cut, then from the defensive line room, then Larry Ogunjobi will take that number. So, and this has just probably been updated within the last 24 hours, I think.
Right. Interesting. Okay, because you see the duplicate numbers, but usually not with your starting left tackle and your $8 million guy is going to
Sure.
probably play 600 snaps this year. Usually it's fringe 90-man dudes. So interesting
Right.
news there.
And look, all I'm going off of is what the media side says here. So could it have been updated wrong? It wouldn't be the first
Yeah,
time.
that's true
Yeah,
too.
there. All I can tell you is he is listed at 65 on the media side.
All right, a couple more questions before we close things out. Tim Chase, Camp Zero and Camp Hero, your guess, please, of the new corners. I don't know if am I doing Camp Zero and Camp Hero of the corners or in general, and is the new corners a separate question? But I haven't given a lot of thought about who the zeros and heroes are. Usually, as Tomlin would say, they reveal themselves to you, so we'll just all be along for the ride. I would caution: there's always a guy that looks good in camp before the pads come on when they're in shells and shorts and they're running around. Damone Patterson's a good one that comes to mind, and you want to see if those guys can get through the finish line, not just look good the first week, but look good the last week, a month into training camp. So, word of caution there. I remember a couple years ago, Steven Nelson's first practice was not particularly good, and fans freaked out about Steven Nelson, and he was fine and ended up being a good corner for the team. So, sample size is important there. In terms of the new corners, Witherspoon re-signing, Wallace new corner, where Casey's going to align, those kinds of things. I don't know exactly how it's going to look, and so I will definitely have my eyes peeled for the defensive configurations come this time a couple weeks from now.
Yep. It's way too early for me to even think about
Yep.
zeros or heroes and all. I usually, work off kind of what things that you've disseminated throughout the training camp practices and what I see during the preseason. I don't want to go predicting zeros and heroes.
Ralphie B, new Steelers stadium name dumb. That's the whole comment there. Justin Cross says, can't wait to see you guys at Acrisure this season. We probably won't be there, but a lot of Steeler fans will be. I think people will eventually warm up to it.
David O will be there. Yeah,
Yeah,
somebody make sure you run in and say hi to David O at some point.
definitely. K Jackson, Pittsburgh, just a comment here. Hey guys, really appreciate these live streams and all you do on the depot. I know it is a total team effort from everyone, so thank you all. Thank you, K Jackson. Appreciate that. Yeah, great team. And the great Matthew Marks, on a vacation, a well-deserved vacation, so we're happy he's taking a little time off. Tim Chase, I miss Tunch Ilkin's Camp Phenom picks each year. Yeah, I miss Tunch a lot. Was at the Man Up conference this year where he had been annually, and to not have him there was very sad and somber. Let's see. Mark Tobin and Russ Obenstein is here as well. So good to hear from you, Russ. Hopefully your back's doing all right. Mark Tobin, what's the story behind the name change? Bottom line is, Heinz and Pittsburgh and the Steelers had a 20-year agreement back in 2001. That agreement got extended for 1 year, and then the rights were up to the highest bidder, and Acrisure paid them the most money to have the stadium rights, and that's basically what happened.
Follow the money. Show me the money.
I mean, I think Heinz' statement, even if I can pull it up here, said that, right? Do I have the statement here?
Yeah, I posted
Um,
the full statement on
I
on
think I
my
have, yeah, I
timeline
have the wrong
earlier.
article. I just want to get to that here real quick, just to kind of. It was interesting, a little transparency here. What did they say? They
There it
said,
says Pittsburgh is the city where H.J. Heinz was born and where he launched what is now an iconic global brand. The Steelers are a legendary franchise, and together with Heinz are a winning combination that represents some of the best of Pittsburgh. While we worked diligently with the Steelers for several months around a new naming rights deal, they found a new partner willing to pay significant of our new partnership in the days ahead. So keep your fingers crossed that the details of the new partnership. I don't know. Will that result in the bottle staying up there and still being maybe the Heinz red zone? I don't know, but I guess keep your fingers crossed maybe for something like that. I guess.
yeah, and sorry if the stream cut out there for a second, OBS randomly, and this is new, disconnected and reconnected. So I think we're good right now, but it's almost time to end the stream anyway. Yeah, it's interesting that they said because
That's
Art Rooney,
probably a good time.
yeah,
People
probably.
probably for me reading a statement's probably not
No,
made for radio,
did a
right?
good job. Art Rooney was really optimistic about a deal with Heinz getting extended out, and the commentary here seems to suggest that they worked for months trying to negotiate a deal, and then just basically said Acrisure came in with a big fat check, and Heinz could not compete with that, would not compete
Right.
with that. So, as you said, and as Mark says, so they sold out for the money. Yeah, kind of. I mean, that's kind of how these things work. They don't really probably care that much, and it'll help them do other things they want to do, projects, and I
I
don't
think
know.
there's like three teams now, right? Three franchises that don't have stadium naming rights,
Oh,
right?
really?
Lambeau,
Okay. Soldier Field.
Arrowhead, I think, and Paul Brown Stadium.
What's Chicago?
Doesn't Chicago have a name now?
Do they? They may. I have no idea.
Hold on a minute here.
Sometimes you wonder, is it like it's definitely Paul Brown Stadium? There's no crypto.com at Paul Brown Stadium or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember if the Bears have changed it from Pursuit of New Era. I don't know. It's just called Soldier Field, I guess, right now. So
Okay, maybe four.
maybe four then.
All right. Well, regardless, I mean, those are all historic teams. They're mostly well, all of them, right? Cleveland, Chicago, Green Bay, and Kansas City. So Arrowhead, correct?
Yeah, I think I read an
So
article earlier today. I thought Arrowhead was one of them.
yeah, Pittsburgh's been lucky. They have not played in a lot of differently named stadiums over the years, and so this will be weird, but people will get used to it, and we'll all be screaming about firing Matt Canada come week one, and no one will care about what the stadium is called. So that's what's going to happen. All right, that's going to wrap up today's stream. Appreciate you guys being here and supporting the stream. We'll have some more content for you guys. Things will certainly be picking up a lot more in the coming weeks here as training camp gets underway. Dave, as always, thanks for your time. Appreciate you being on the stream.
All right, thank you for putting this together. Thank you for everybody who showed up and listened tonight. Peace and love, and please be careful.
You can see an archive version of this on Steelers Depot in a little bit. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to catch our next live stream, which will be, Monday the 26th, right? The 25th, right before this team gets ready to report to training camp. So it'll be an exciting time coming up here on the channel. Again, appreciate you guys watching, and we'll talk to you soon.